it's kind of hard to follow absolutely everything that's going on now because I really can't stand Keir Starmer, and I don't really want to watch GB News and talk TV, talk radio about all the stuff that's going off. But it's impossible to avoid it, and it's actually imminently critically affecting everybody now. These things that he's threatening to do with the law, which I actually don't think that he can do. Right? I mean, look. We've got Douglas Murray with the whole Tommy Robinson thing popping up here. We've got George Galloway popping up here. And we've got looking very serious. And we've got Black Belt Barrister as well. Are we being... Even Black Belt Barrister saying, are we being silenced? I don't even want to watch that video. I mean, it's just... It's actually distressing to actually even think about all these things that they're bringing in. But I want to try and make a few things clear, right? From what is learned, there's quite a few people now, right, trying to claim that we don't have a constitution. There's a program on the other day. If I look at my history, I'll probably see which channel it is. But there's some people who actually are a little bit misled, and they don't actually understand that we have got a constitution. They think that they keep saying that, oh, we've got a constitution, but it's not well defined, it's not codified, it's not clear. That's absolutely wrong. It is actually very clear. They haven't studied it enough. They haven't actually researched it and looked into it enough and thought about it properly. These people don't understand when they're reading these statutes and the great charters and so forth. It does mean something. It means something very clear and explicit and an effect in law and an exact principle. And it actually is all of the legislation that has been made, the most of it, and obviously the further back it goes, the closer it is, and the less it's been deviated. The more modern we get in law, the more mistakes and errors they've made, which aren't compatible with the previous laws, which it's meant to be compatible with. A lot of it is compatible. Like, for example, the Town and Country Planning Act, that's compatible. There are some errors and mistakes, and it's those errors and mistakes which you've got to call them out on, because you've got this thing called incompatibility with the convention, right? In the criminal procedure rules, which you can call them out on. These are mistakes which people like Tony Blair have made and David Cameron, and you've got to call these people out when they've made a mistake, because that's just the way it is. But actually, there is a hell of a lot of compatibility. There are many people who have made laws and legislation who know what the law is and what the rights are and have made it fully compatible. It's only certain people who have made errors here and there, and that's when you call them out on it. Now, the thing is, the thing with Keir Starmer, he's wanting to enact legislation very similar to these terrorist laws, which they did in Canada, you know, when they were basically saying that those Canadian truckers, they were suspending their bank accounts and all these other things. And what's actually happened in Canada is at a later date further on, it's actually been judged that Trudeau was wrong and he shouldn't have raised certain actions and certain things. And this is what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is talking about. Look, right, before we even get right into it, the concept of the 77th Brigade, right, and I'll say it very clear and loud to make sure that the algorithm picks it up, right? 77th Brigade, 77th Battalion, whatever it is, who are under direction by Parliament, right? Parliament, who are meant to actually enforce and protect our privileges and rights when they're in use and effect, right? These army units, military units, and the police, right? The foundational law of England says that you cannot be fined or judged without the fair judgment of your peers or a proper legal process in effect. And even the police in the speeding fines, when you automatically get the fine through, you can opt to go to court. But the thing with those is the police aren't meant to hold common pleas where it's a felony, and a felony is something to do with taking your possessions off you, right? Not just a fine. If it's a fine, it's a fine. If in law, right, if Keir Starmer wants to prosecute all these protesters and prosecute people for saying things online that are unlawful, then he can prosecute them or have a method for that. But this kind of this concept of some unit somewhere, like 77th Brigade or 77th Battalion or whatever it is, or any other covert unit, but we don't know who's operating with Anonymous, with this scammer Payback, with all these other hacking groups who we don't know who the hell they're affiliated with anymore and what sides they're on. But let's stick with government to start with, and then there's the Russians, we don't even know what they're doing in China, right? But let's stick with our own government. Big Brother Watch investigated these units, and the rule was meant to be, in that pandemic lockdown, that they were only supposed to be focusing on overseas. But what business is our own military or units focusing on what civilians are saying or doing overseas? And then the Americans were actually not meant to be able to take actions on their own citizens, but abroad. But obviously some of them got caught up in it and were taken down or affected when they shouldn't have been. It was almost like you scratch our back and we'll scratch yours. It's almost like, you know, someone with the Americans cleaning out Starmer's mouth with a toothpick, and Starmer cleaning out the Americans' mouth with a toothpick, because they're not allowed to clean their own mouth out, when it's political at least anyway, right? But the fact is, right, that taking things down on social media platforms, the whole concept of removing a channel or removing a video or censoring your speech or dropping the algorithms or whatever it is, right? This needs to be sent to the Privileges Committee in Parliament, really, and there's a hell of a lot of people now trying to get their voices heard and speak out. There were hundreds of thousands of channels and people with something to say, but, you know, if you submit it, then you submit it, right? Look, right, in law, in British law, the absolute model of British law which Starmer wants to engage is this: unless it's a felony, which is a really serious crime, you can't have your things directly taken from you from a criminal court, right? It's only extremely serious crimes. And I don't think speaking and talking is that serious. You know, you're not, this is the thing. The government aren't really meant to, civil cases is meant to be between private parties. The government is not really meant to engage in civil law against individuals unless, you know, it's a parking fine or something, right? In criminal law, getting your things taken down or taken from you or removed, we're not meant to do that. In criminal law, if you've done something wrong, you're meant to have a fair trial and get fined, or if it's really serious, put in prison, or, you know, community service or whatever. It's not in the government aren't meant to take your own personal things from you unless you don't pay a fine, and then in other than recovering the monies through other means, right, is your things. They can't do it, and Starmer shouldn't want to do it, right? Those videos, right, that you make are your possessions. It's media. Not only is it art, it's immaterial. And when you make a video or a recording, you not only own the rights to it, you own the rights to what you said, and it is actually yours. And, you know, when you put it on the platforms, they shouldn't even have a policy which makes you, you know, even when you put it on, you haven't signed the rights to it over to anyone when you put it on there, because they're always arguing about protecting your rights to it. If they're arguing about protecting the copyright to your material, then you've got all rights, including political rights to it, not just copyright. Starmer wants to... Starmer really wants to erase all history. He's a man who grew up as a lawyer, a human rights lawyer, and then went working for the prosecution. Now he wants to pretend that none of history happened, and he wants almost like a completely new legal system, which he can't do it currently. It's impossible, right? All of these covert units and military fractions, right? They're taking your stuff from you or taking it down, and in many cases not even informing you. They're acting covertly, taking your things without a fair trial from your peers, a jury. They don't want you to have a jury trial, not even at the first level, at magistrates, and let alone Crown Court, and in the High Court you're not going to get a jury, right? I don't think they can do it, and I'm calling it out now. I'll probably have to send it to the Attorney General, because Richard Ormer, he said that, you know, he claims that in his swearing in oath, he claims that he's going to enforce the rule of law, and he claims that he's not going to be tied to any particular party. That's what his promise was. That's what his claim is, right? He claims and promises that he's going to enforce the rule of law, right, and not be tied to any particular party. That's what his promise is. So I do not believe that Starmer can enact any legislation and create any offences where they can take your personal things from you. And YouTube shouldn't have been taking them anyway, because firstly, America might have the supposedly most robust free speech law. We have got a robust free speech law in England for political matters that are to the Parliament in church, state or law, not just recreational or business. When it's matters of church, state or law, in England, we do have a robust free speech and it cannot be taken away. Now, the problem is that if you just cast the dice and pick any random time in history, like, 1984 or whenever, and, in 1967 or whatever, right? You've got civilian life, and you've got people playing squash, playing cricket, or in a business meeting, or going through a McDonald's drive-through, right? All that is recreational or business or normal civilian life and activity, right? But the problem is, when we have this issue like we've got now, it is matters of church, state or religion. And that's the reason why people are getting annoyed and taking to remonstrations and other activities because of Starmer. Now, if people don't agree with what Starmer is doing in his law changes, right, online, and 77th Brigade, and the Army, and whatever department of government you want to pick, or whether it's American or English, it's matters of church, state or law. It's matters of how the country's being run, state. And when you're opposing Starmer now changing the law, you're opposing him in a matter of state, how the country should be run. Right? And that is covered in free speech, because you're not talking about a squash game with your friend on YouTube or Facebook. You're not looking at what Bundaberg ginger beer you're buying on Facebook, or where you're going to be going on a Friday night dancing with your friends, right? You're actually talking about religions, mainly Islams and Muslims and Christianity and other persons who are coming to the country with religions. That's matters of religion, right? And matters of state and how the country is being run now and what changes they're going to implement. It's cognitively impossible, right, for Keir Starmer. I don't know what his exact degree is, Starmer. He's got a legal degree. And fair enough, he's been in and out of a lot of courtrooms in front of judges and he's won a lot of cases. So what? Right? So what? He was a human rights lawyer and then he worked as a Crown prosecutor with all his tests, with all his, all these thresholds and tests for the CPS. Let's get this clear, right? There was no CPS before 1986, 1985, right? There was no Crown Prosecution Service in existence before the mid-80s. Back to the Future. You know, Marty McFly, Back to the Future, Doc Brown, no Crown Prosecution Service, right? No tests, no nothing. It's not as old as me, right? The Crown Prosecution Service is not as old as me. I'm older than the Crown Prosecution Service, right? Until then, the police employed lawyers. The police employed barristers. The police employed and instructed criminal lawyers, prosecutors, to try criminal cases. Anyone could employ a criminal lawyer to try a criminal case. The CPS is not as old as me. So what they've been pottering around with in their cleansing routines for their assisting offenders, for their trials, for their tests, for their thresholds and so forth, it's not as old as you and me, right? It's in progress, in development, and I think there's mistakes being made, right? It's relatively new, and just because a man has got the balls to stand up on the platform and be in front of in charge of an organisation like this, look at Tony Blair. I don't think Starmer is that good at law. I'm not saying that, I'm not saying I am because I'm not a qualified lawyer, but I don't think that Starmer is that good at law. Not to say that I am, but, I've worked out some things that, these people have been wrong at, so I can't be that bad at it. I don't want to go to university to study it because I don't really want to have to do it, but I have to do it out of necessity. The government, through illegal... They only took people's possessions, the house, the land, their things off them, when it was extremely really serious proceedings like treason, or like things that are as serious as the Act of Indemnity and things like that, getting excluded from the Act of Indemnity. Lords and barons who went against the king, things like that. When you're getting into Duchy of Lancaster and all that kind of area of law, right? The government isn't supposed to take people's personal things off them, and not covertly either, without a fair trial. Because if Starmer wants to be able to stop people doing certain things, right, without them even knowing that the government, like some kind of ninja thing, when that's sneaky. That's almost like sneaking laws through without people knowing that they've got them through, and things like that. It's not right in English law, and it's not loosely vague statutes and loosely vague constitution. It's very clear. And when it comes, so the problem with Starmer is that he's got a problem because we've entered a phase where now lots of people are interested in matters of church, state, and law in this country. And they're not happy with the way it's been run, and they've got something to say about it, and they want to engage, and you're immediately into a protected area. Right, put it this way, it is impossible for Sir Keir Starmer, the Knight of the Realm of Charles III, and we've already complained about Charles III breaking the Act of Settlement 1700 and trying to take away his rights with the WEF, which he hasn't done now with Tess Leary's petition in Parliament. So we stopped King Charles III from taking our rights away under COVID, right? Sir Keir Starmer, His Majesty's Knight of this realm, is impossible. It's impossible for Keir Starmer to use an employed force, that any unit of this country, right, to stop people freely speaking about matters of church, state, or law, which is a religion, how the country should be run, or what the law is or should be, right? Impossible. He can't do it. He can't do it, and if he does do it, then he's committing treason, and he is the person who needs to be arrested. I don't care what title he's got in front of him, right? And he's stick him in the Supreme Court, and 77th Brigade should be arresting Starmer. They should be taking Starmer to court. He's not immune from the law. He can be judged by the law lords, right? He can't do it. And we've also got the Public Meeting Act, which it's the Public Meeting Act actually protects your right to engage and participate with the rest of the public. They cannot, even if you commit an offence, you can get prosecuted or suffer that offence, and you get prosecuted for that offence, but it cannot stop you engaging and participating in public discussion and debate, both directions, receiving and transacting information, unless you're in prison. They can't do it. It's not possible. And when you, in those meetings, if it is matters of church, state, or religion, well, church is religion, church, state, or law, sorry, on top of the right to participate both ways, you've got absolute, complete, total freedom of speech in there. And that is the way it is. In America, at the moment, and Australia, they don't have the Public Meeting Act, which gives them the right to always participate both ways, transmit and receive. Right? In England, you cannot stop, since 1908, you cannot stop anyone participating in a group or community conference on matters. That means absolutely every citizen in England has a right to participate, both way engagement, send and receive with their fellow citizens in any matters. And if it is matters of church, state and law, they also can say exactly what they want, what they think and feel about it, without any restriction at all whatsoever, right? As long as they don't prevent an other person from saying what they want and giving evidence, and as long as they don't prevent them from participating or disrupt the proceedings. And that basically means breaking it up and preventing other people from having their say, right? Yes, we need order. Order is sequence, right? In Parliament, John Bercow or, whoever it is now, that Lancashire guy, his name slipped my mind now, right? He uses the word order, right? Order is sequential. Order is uniformity or a process of sequence. Order is not what you can and can't feel, what you can and can't say, or what your opinion is or is not. Order is, now it's your turn to speak, now it's your turn to speak, now it's your turn to speak, and now it's time to be quiet, and now it's this time's person to speak, and now we'll take a break, and now we'll come back in. That is order, right? Order does not mean you can and can't say this or that, or you can and cannot feel that, or this can and cannot be your opinion, or you should or should not suggest this or that. That's not order. That is freedom of speech and expression. Order is different. Order is to facilitate and provide for every person taking part, right? That is what order is. So it's not actually about the immaterial or subject or the content of it. It's actually about the process. It's about process. Order is process. Order is a process. So a lot of this stuff Starmer's threatening and talking about, he can't do. And this is now when it comes down to the police, right? And this is also in the Bill of Rights. It's very, very clear now about the right to bear arms, because we didn't have a police force as we know it now. We had constables and sheriffs, and the public had responsibility, the ability to respond, the legal right to respond, the powers to respond, and the responsibility. The public had responsibility for enforcing the law, right? And making sure that other citizens didn't break the law and proceeding, right? We didn't need Superman to come and rescue us, right? Now since the 1830s, we've got an employed force, right? The 1688 Bill of Rights is very, very clear on this. There's no vagueness about it. If a force is employed and armed, right, and that force acts unlawfully or is doing anything unlawfully, right, the citizens, particularly good citizens, Protestants, but let's not be picky about religion now, but Church of England or whatever it is, let's say the national religion it is now, there isn't much popish arguments between Protestants and Catholics anymore, right? The citizens, let's call them good citizens or average citizens, right, of religious goodwill, whatever, right, in the national religion, any force employed which is armed, if that force acts, right, in any way unlawfully or is acting unlawfully, anyone else has a legal right to carry and bear arms to defend themselves against that force. Fact, right? Don't matter whether it's online, stealing and taking your information and data, 77th Brigade or whatever they're called, or the army or whatever you want to call it, right? Or parliament even, right? Because this is not about parliamentary privilege. This is about the 1688 Bill of Rights. If the parliamentary privilege only means that Parliament has to answer to its equals or within its own jurisdiction, what it's doing to you, if Parliament is acting unlawfully against the law, you've got a right to defend yourself against it, right? This is fact, straight up. I'm not joking now, I'm serious. We have to be serious, right? This is serious, right? That means that all of the hackers in England, right, if they're not breaking the law, have a legal right to protect and defend themselves from this 77th Brigade and Battalion if it is acting unlawfully. Well, they can't take your things unless you have a fair trial, right? And if Starmer wants to create a load of new laws, which are apparently really, really serious felonies, right? I doubt it. I doubt that freedom of speech or just saying your own opinion is going to be a felony. Firstly, attending and transacting both ways, participating and being present in any meeting of the public, conferring, right? You cannot remove them, right? Whether it's online or down the street or in your own house, you cannot possibly be removed, right? And if it's about matters of church, state, or law, which all these issues are, right, you can say what you want. So right there, Starmer is planning treason right now. He's planning treason. Can't do it. Because all these matters are matters of church, state, and law. He can't do it. I want to see him do it. As soon as he does that to Mark Rowley, every single person in this country can defend themselves with arms against Sir Mark Rowley, the Knight of this realm, and any military commander in this country wearing a uniform with honours. I don't care how many honours are in front or after their title, whether it is King Charles III, right? In fact, says that it's illegal to draw arms against the king, right? But it says that an employed force, you've got the right to bear arms for defence, right? Soldiers in the army aren't liable for any deaths that occur by accident when they draw arms, even when they're fighting alongside on the same side, right? That's another interesting law. Not that the normal citizens are subscribed to the army, but as soon as an employed force is acting unlawfully, they've immediately got the right to bear arms, right? So any accidents that occur or happen, I suppose they're also covered for that as well. I'm not saying that people should or should not, but Starmer cannot remove people's, not only the people's possessions, their things, their media. YouTube's already done it illegally in England. YouTube's already breaking the law in England. I think YouTube is an armed force. And Starmer's even proposing that he is going to direct these private businesses and companies to use force against us and take our things away, which are the things that they're taking are not only our possessions, our things, our own personal media, which we have the copyright rights over, the legal rights to it in civil law. He wants to prevent us engaging, and you don't even know who's taking it down. So you're not even going to get a fair trial of whether the whole thing is completely and totally illegal and corrupt. It is absolutely illegal and corrupt. So they're asking for trouble. I don't think Starmer is a man of law at all. I don't think Starmer is a man of the law. He's lawless because he just doesn't believe. He doesn't believe in this country. He says that he prefers Davos to Westminster. So Starmer, he's walking around on the Knight of the Realm. He's on the Knight of the Realm of England, but he doesn't even believe in the Constitution of England, which is a robust framework and explicitly clear. This is the thing. The things that he's proposing to do, for the reasons he wants to do them, under the matters of church, state and law, he can't do it. It cannot be done currently. He can only do it for sports, recreation and business. And the matters that we're talking about are matters of church, state and law. So, he's taken the path of Tony Blair. They already removed all the civil juries, and now you've got all these ridiculous, we're getting ripped off by all these companies and we don't have money free, like Sainsbury's, unless you've got a Nectar card, you have to pay, an extra £1.50 on your 4-pack of ginger beer or whatever. Privileged people, because they're loyalty cards. So you get things cheaper. Well, basically, we're ripping everyone off. Well, where else am I going to go shopping? They're privileged that we go into the shop and buy their stuff. We're being fleeced by these big companies. They would have never have done half of this stuff if we'd have had a jury in civil cases, because the public wouldn't have put up with it. They'd have said, no, we're not having loyalty cards. It's not fair. It's not. You're ripping people off. Be loyal. Where's Keir Starmer's loyalty to the Magna Carta? Where is Keir Starmer's loyalty to the Bill of Rights, to the Claim of Right Act 1689? Where's Keir Starmer's loyalty, to the Act of Settlement? He doesn't like them, really. Starmer's a drifter now. He's like, I like Davos, I like Europe, I like all this censorship and all this control. We've had all this before. We've had civil wars, we've had conflicts, and afterwards, right? Why didn't they say, right? You're not allowed to say this, they didn't, after the Civil War, if they thought it was such a dangerous thing to be able to have people speaking freely about matters of church, state, and law, they would have banned it then. But then they realised, no, people need to be able to speak about these things, So it's all been tried. It's been tried and tested. This is the problem. So I can't see how Starmer can lawfully do it. And I'm in the process now of trying to get this public meeting act acknowledged, and there's plenty of institutes like you're not allowed to repeal certain things that are older than a certain. If it's older than a certain date, you're not allowed to repeal it or within a certain time. And even if you seek to, persons in Parliament who seek to try and get the fundamental constitutional framework changed are actually regarded as traitors in law, right? And we haven't done too bad with it so far because why has Rishi Sunak been talking about? Oh, we're keeping Britain at the forefront. We keep Britain at the forefront of progress. Well, how did we get to the forefront of progress in the first place? If it wasn't, for the Constitution, then we won't be here. So it must amount to something. So this is it. So I am challenging Starmer on whether he can do half of these things and whether half the things. The thing is, we don't even know what 77 Brigade were taking down or not. What about freedom of information? Tony Blair introduced through the Freedom of Information Act. Well, let's see what they've been taking down. How about freedom of information to the Parliament? Well, I want a list of everything of mine that was, censored, removed, algorithmed, dipped or whatever, dib-dab-dobbed or whatever. I want a list of it all, and then and then we'll see what they did lawfully and unlawfully. The concept of this taking things down covertly or removing them without fair trial, particularly when it's in a protected class of materials, and it's impossible. Effectively, completely and totally impossible, right? It's just ridiculous. The whole idea and concept of what they're trying to do.